Chapter 3. Warren Bishop drifted in a sea of darkness, his consciousness ebbing and flowing like the tide. Distant voices murmured at the edge of his awareness, incomprehensible and fleeting. Pain throbbed through his body, a dull, insistent ache that seemed to emanate from every fibre of his being. Slowly, inexorably, Warren clawed his way back to consciousness. His eyelids felt heavy, as if weighted down by lead. With monumental effort, he forced them open, only to be assaulted by a blinding white light that sent daggers of pain lancing through his skull. He groaned, the sound raspy and unfamiliar to his own ears. The world around him swam into focus, revealing stark white walls and the unmistakable antiseptic smell of a hospital room. Warren blinked, trying to make sense of his surroundings. "Where?" he croaked, his throat dry and raw. A figure moved at the edge of his vision, and suddenly a kind, plump face framed by auburn hair appeared above him. "Easy now, Mr. Bishop," a woman's voice said, her Irish lilt soothing despite the circumstances. "You've had quite a knock to the head. Best not to move too quickly." Warren tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness forced him back down. He closed his eyes, waiting for the room to stop spinning. "Thelma," he mumbled, the name rising unbidden to his lips. "Where's Thelma?" "The nurse. For that's what she must be," Warren realized, hesitated for a moment before responding. "I'm afraid I don't know anything about a Thelma, sir. You were brought in alone last night. Now, let me check your vitals, and I'll fetch the doctor for you." As the nurse busied herself with various instruments, Warren struggled to piece together his fragmented memories. He and Thelma had been in Ireland, on their honeymoon. They'd visited Hag's Head, and then... Warren's brow furrowed as he tried to recall what had happened next. "There now, Mr. Bishop," the nurse said, interrupting his thoughts. "Your pulse is a bit rapid, but that's to be expected. I'm Nurse Una, and I'll be looking after you. Can you tell me how you're feeling?" Warren opened his eyes again, focusing on the nurse's face. "Like I've been run over by a herd of wild horses," he said, attempting a weak smile. "My head's pounding something fierce, and every inch of me aches. But more importantly, I need to know what happened to my wife. Thelma, she was with me. Where is she?" Nurse Unai's expression softened with sympathy. "I'm sorry, Mr. Bishop, but as I said, you were brought in alone. The doctor will be here shortly, and he might have more information for you. In the meantime, try to rest. You've taken quite a beating." Warren's heart raced as panic began to set in. He couldn't remember clearly what had happened, but he knew with absolute certainty that something was terribly wrong. Thelma should be here, by his side. The fact that she wasn't filled him with a dread he'd never experienced before. Before he could press Nurse Una for more information, the door to his room opened, admitting a tall man with greying hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He carried a clipboard and wore an expression of professional concern. "Ah, Mr. Bishop, you're awake. Excellent," the man said, his voice carrying the same Irish lilt as Nurse Una's. "I'm Dr. O'Malley. How are you feeling?" Warren repeated his earlier assessment, adding, "But what I really need to know is where my wife is. Thelma, she was with me. We are on our honeymoon. Please, can you tell me what's happened to her?" Dr. O'Malley exchanged a glance with Nurse Una before addressing Warren. "Mr. Bishop, I understand your concern, but right now we need to focus on your condition. You've suffered a concussion, along with several bruised ribs and various cuts and bruises. Can you tell me what you remember about how you got these injuries?" Warren closed his eyes, trying to concentrate. Flashes of memory teased at the edges of his mind. A dark parking lot, the sound of screeching tires, Thelma's scream. His eyes snapped open, panic surging through him. "We were attacked," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "In the parking lot of our bed and breakfast. There were men. They grabbed Thelma. I tried to fight them off, but..." He trailed off, frustration and fear evident in his voice. Dr. O'Malley nodded, making notes on his clipboard. "I see. Mr. Bishop, we can contact the local Garda, that's our police force. They can investigate the incident. But for now, it's crucial that you rest and recover. Your injuries are serious, and you need time to heal." Warren shook his head, wincing at the pain the movement caused. "No, you don't understand. I can't just lie here while Thelma is out there somewhere in danger. I have to find her." He struggled to sit up, ignoring the protests of his battered body. Nurse Una moved quickly to his side, gently but firmly pushing him back down. "Mr. Bishop, please. You're in no condition to be moving about." "She's right," Dr. O'Malley added. "In your current state, you'd be more of a hindrance than a help in the search for your wife. The best thing you can do for her right now is to focus on your recovery." Warren felt tears of frustration prick at his eyes. He knew they were right, logically, but every fiber of his being screamed at him to get up, to go find Thelma. The thought of her alone and afraid, at the mercy of their attackers, was almost more than he could bear. "How long have I been here?" he asked, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. "You were brought in late last night," Dr. O'Malley replied. "It's now early afternoon. You've been unconscious for quite some time, which is why it's so important that you rest and allow us to monitor your condition." Warren nodded, trying to process this information. Hours had passed since the attack, hours during which anything could have happened to Thelma. The thought made him feel sick with worry and guilt. "I need to speak with the police," he said, his voice stronger now, fueled by determination. "I need to tell them everything I can remember about the men who took Thelma. Every minute we waste could be putting her in more danger." Dr. O'Malley sighed, recognizing the steel in Warren's voice. "I understand your urgency, Mr. Bishop. I'll contact the Garda and see if I can get someone here to take your statement. But I must insist that you remain in bed and allow us to continue monitoring your condition. Is that acceptable?" Warren nodded, relieved to finally be taking some action, however small. "Yes, thank you. And I'm sorry for being difficult. I know you're just trying to help. It's just, Thelma is my whole world. I can't bear the thought of anything happening to her." Nurse Una patted his hand sympathetically. "We understand, Mr. Bishop. We'll do everything we can to help. Now, why don't you try to get some rest while we wait for the Garda to arrive? I'll bring you some water." As Nurse Una and Dr. O'Malley left the room, Warren closed his eyes, trying to focus his scattered thoughts. He needed to remember every detail of the attack, every scrap of information that might help find Thelma. As she returned with his water, Warren turned to Nurse Una. "I need to get out of here," he said, his voice low but determined. "I can't just lie here while Thelma is out there somewhere. I have to find her." Nurse Una's expression was sympathetic but firm. "Mr. Bishop, I understand how you feel, but you're in no condition to leave. You've suffered a serious concussion, not to mention your other injuries. The best thing you can do for your wife right now is to rest and regain your strength." Warren shook his head, wincing at the pain the movement caused. "You don't understand. Every minute I spend here is a minute wasted. I need to be out there, searching for her." Before Nurse Una could respond, Dr. O'Malley entered the room. He took in the scene before him, noting Warren's agitated state. "Is everything all right in here?" he asked, moving to check Warren's vitals. "Dr. O'Malley," Warren said, seizing the opportunity. "I need to leave. I appreciate everything you've done for me, but I can't stay here any longer. My wife needs me." The doctor frowned, exchanging a glance with Nurse Una. "Mr. Bishop, I understand your concern, but I must strongly advise against leaving. Your injuries are serious, and you need time to heal. If you leave now, you risk further injury or even permanent damage." Warren's frustration boiled over. "And if I stay, I risk losing Thelma forever. Don't you understand? She's out there, alone and afraid, and I'm the only one who can find her. I have to go." Dr. O'Malley sighed, recognizing the determination in Warren's voice. "Mr. Bishop, I cannot in good conscience recommend that you leave. However, I also cannot force you to stay against your will. If you insist on leaving, it will have to be against medical advice. I must warn you of the risks involved." Warren nodded, a sense of relief washing over him. "I understand the risks, Doctor, but I have to do this. I couldn't live with myself if something happened to Thelma, and I just sat here doing nothing." Dr. O'Malley nodded reluctantly. "Very well. Nurse Una will help you get dressed and provide you with some basic medical supplies." Warren agreed, eager to be on his way. As Nurse Una helped him dress, he tried to ignore the pain that shot through his body with every movement. His determination to find Thelma overshadowed his physical discomfort. Once dressed, Warren stood shakily, leaning on the bed for support. Dr. O'Malley handed him a small bag of supplies and a list of instructions. "Remember, Mr. Bishop," he said gravely, Your body has been through significant trauma. You must be careful not to overexert yourself. If you experience severe dizziness, nausea, or increased pain, return to the hospital immediately. Warren nodded, his jaw set with determination. I understand, Doctor. Thank you for everything. Nurse Unag approached, concern etched on her face. Mr. Bishop, are you sure about this? Perhaps you could wait just a day or two more? I can't, Warren replied, his voice soft but firm. Every moment I spend here is a moment Thelma is in danger. I have to find her. With a sigh of resignation, Nurse Une helped Warren to the door. His steps were unsteady, and he had to pause several times to catch his breath and wait for waves of dizziness to pass. But with each step, his resolve strengthened. As they made their way down the hospital corridor, Warren's mind raced with plans and possibilities. Where would he start? Who could he turn to for help? The local police could probably help, but he couldn't shake the feeling that time was of the essence. Patients and staff cast curious glances their way as Warren shuffled along, leaning heavily on Nurse Una. He ignored their stares, focused solely on his goal, getting out of the hospital and beginning his search for Thelma. At the hospital entrance, Dr. O'Malley was waiting. Mr. Bishop, he said, his tone serious, I've called for a taxi to take you to your lodging. Please, promise me you'll rest before doing anything rash. Warren nodded, though they both knew it was a promise he was unlikely to keep. I'll do my best, Doctor, and thank you for understanding. As Warren stepped out into the crisp Irish air, he took a deep breath, wincing at the pain in his ribs. The world seemed to spin for a moment, and he gripped the doorframe for support. Nurse Una moved to help him, but he waved her off. I'm fine, he said, more to convince himself than her. I can manage. A taxi pulled up, and the driver stepped out to help Warren into the back seat. As he settled in, Warren turned to Dr. O'Malley and Nurse Una one last time. If you hear anything about Thelma, anything at all, please contact me at the bed and breakfast, he said. They nodded, and with a final wave, Warren closed the car door. As the taxi pulled away from the hospital, he leaned back against the seat, closing his eyes against the pain and dizziness that threatened to overwhelm him. Where to, sir? The driver asked, glancing at Warren in the rearview mirror. Warren opened his eyes, meeting the driver's gaze. The Emerald Glen bed and breakfast in Lisdoon Varna, please. And if you could hurry, I'd appreciate it. As the taxi wound its way through the narrow Irish streets, Warren's mind raced. He needed to retrace their steps, to find any clue that might lead him to Thelma. The bed and breakfast was the logical place to start. Perhaps someone there had seen something, anything that could help. The journey seemed to take an eternity, each bump and turn sending jolts of pain through Warren's battered body. But he gritted his teeth, forcing himself to focus on what he would do once he arrived. Finally, the familiar sight of the Emerald Glen bed and breakfast came into view. Warren's heart clenched as he remembered the last time he'd seen it, returning from their day at Hag's Head, blissfully unaware of the nightmare that was about to unfold. The taxi came to a stop, and Warren fumbled with his wallet, paying the driver with shaking hands. As he stepped out of the car, the world tilted alarmingly, and he had to lean against the vehicle to keep from falling. Are you all right, sir? The driver asked, concern evident in his voice. Warren nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He took a deep breath, steadying himself, then slowly made his way towards the entrance of the bed and breakfast. Mrs. O'Brien, the proprietor, was at the desk when Warren stumbled through the door. Her eyes widened in shock at his appearance. Mr. Bishop, she exclaimed, rushing around the desk to help him. We've been so worried. What happened? Where's Mrs. Bishop? Warren allowed Mrs. O'Brien to guide him to a nearby chair, sinking into it gratefully. She's been taken, he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. Kidnapped. I need to find her. Mrs. O'Brien's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. Oh, good Lord, she whispered. I'll put on some tea. You look like you could use it. As Mrs. O'Brien bustled off to the kitchen, Warren closed his eyes, trying to gather his thoughts. He needed to talk to anyone who might have seen something last night. The sound of a cup being placed on the table beside him roused Warren from his thoughts. He opened his eyes to find Mrs. O'Brien watching him with concern. Thank you, he said, reaching for the tea with trembling hands. Mr. Bishop. Mrs. O'Brien said gently. Shouldn't you be in the hospital? You look terrible, if you don't mind me saying. Warren shook his head, wincing at the movement. I can't stay there, not while Thelma is missing. Mrs. O'Brien, I need your help. Did you see or hear anything unusual last night? The older woman frowned, thinking. I'm afraid not. It was quiet last night, as usual. I was in bed by 10, and I didn't hear a thing until this morning. Warren's heart sank, but he pressed on. What about the other guests? Was anyone else out late last night? Mrs. O'Brien shook her head. Not that I know of. It's been a slow week. You and Mrs. Bishop are our only guests. Warren sighed, frustration building, as he pushed himself to his feet. The world swam alarmingly for a moment, and he had to grip the chair to keep from falling. With a strength born of desperation, Warren pushed past Mrs. O'Brien and made his way down the stairs. Each step sent shockwaves of pain through his body, but he gritted his teeth and pressed on. As he reached the front door, Mrs. O'Brien called out behind him. Mr. Bishop, wait! At least let me call you a taxi. But Warren was already out the door, his mind focused on one thing only, finding Thelma. The cool Irish air hit him like a slap, momentarily clearing the fog of pain and dizziness. He set off down the street, his steps unsteady but determined. The streets of Lisdoonvarna were quiet, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the quaint buildings. Warren's progress was slow, each step a battle against pain and exhaustion. But he pushed on, driven by a love stronger than any physical discomfort.